Hi, Mr. Sanham, and this is a short video presentation covering the 5 characteristics of living things. It's important to notice before we begin that in order for something to be considered alive or an organism, it must actually possess all 5 characteristics of living things. For example, we know that plants need energy in order to survive. They get the energy they need by performing photosynthesis. Insects get the energy they need to survive often by feeding on plants. Frogs or toads get the energy they need by feeding off of insects. A shark can get its energy that it needs to survive by eating sea lions or larger fish. Even bacteria get the energy that they need to survive by consuming or getting energy from other organisms, or in some cases, performing photosynthesis. Let's take a look at the characteristic of living things that focuses on energy. Now remember, again, that in order for an organism to be considered alive, it must have all 5 characteristics. It needs energy to survive, it must reproduce, it must grow and change over time, it must produce waste, and it must be able to respond and adapt to changes in the environment. So, all organisms need energy to survive. Now, this energy could come from the sun through photosynthesis, like this strawberry plant here, or it may come from consuming other organisms. Here, a little girl is eating some watermelon, which got the energy it needs from from the sun, performing photosynthesis. Let's compare these 3 examples here. So, if we have a picture of a buffalo eating grass, a picture of a plant in the sun, and then a picture of a fire. The buffalo eating grass, is that an example of an organism consuming energy? Yes. Here's a plant using photosynthesis. That's an example of an organism. Now, although the fire seems to be using energy, it gives off heat, light, sound, and motion, it's not a living organism because a fire doesn't possess all 5 characteristics of living things. All organisms have to reproduce to ensure the survival of their species. Now, reproduction can mean a whole new organism, offspring, or in some cases even cellular reproduction. So here we have an example of a mama bear with 3 baby bears. Is this an example of organism reproducing? Yes, absolutely. Here we have a cracker. The cracker used to be whole, and then it broke into 3 pieces. Is that reproducing? No. These aren't creating 2 new pieces. This is a cracker just breaking into smaller pieces. And here we have a seed sprouting into seedlings, 3 new plants growing, which all possess the 5 characteristics of living things. Yes, that's an example of reproduction. All organisms must grow in order to survive. Now this again can involve growing in size, changing over time, or even just repairing and replacing damaged cells. In this first example, we have a seed sprouting into a sprout and then growing up into a seedling. Is this an example of a living creature changing and growing? Yes. Here we have a garbage dump. The garbage pile is growing. People are throwing bags of garbage on it all the time. Is that a living thing? No, it's not. The reason is because it doesn't possess all 5 characteristics of living things. It just grows larger because humans are pigs, we make a mess, we throw out a lot of stuff. Here's another example of a growth chart, the growth chart of a human growing from a small child or an infant into a full-grown individual. That's an example of a living creature changing, growing over time. All organisms must produce waste. This may be waste as a byproduct of consuming energy, like from eating or drinking things, where creatures give off liquid or solid waste, or it can be gas waste given off as a byproduct of cellular growth, repair, and reproduction. So our first example here, we have a car giving off exhaust. Now that's a chemical reaction, but it's not a living creature giving off waste. Here we have a dog picking up solid waste. Yes, that's an example of an organism producing waste. And here we have humans breathing out exhaust, carbon dioxide. That's the most common form of waste that humans produce. Finally, all organisms must respond and adapt to changes in their environment. Now, this can be an immediate response or one that can take place over generations. Example of an immediate response. A human is cold because the temperature is down, so they put on a sweater and gloves and their body shivers to keep warm. That's responding and adapting. Here's a sunflower, and as the sun changes and moves across the sky during the day, a sunflower will actually change the way that the flower faces, so it's always facing the sun. That's an example of an organism responding and adapting. Finally, an air conditioner. An air conditioner kicks in when it's hot, but it's not a living creature.